Okay.
I believe that's playing, so we
Okay.
have Denise online, so unless you speak into the microphone, she won't be able to hear
Okay,
it.
I'll vote close. Okay, I'd like to call the February 3rd, 2022 Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting to order. Director, call the roll. So you want to go ahead and call the roll?
Dutile?
Absent?
Well, by phone.
Nope,
Whoops,
she's here.
oh, I'm sorry. Gosh, I'm so quick in the pencil.
Via? Absent. Delker?
Present.
Badla? Okay. We have a quorum.
Thank you.
Chairperson?
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Are there any objections? If there are no objections, the motion is approved. Is there a motion to approve the November 4th, 2020 meetings? I'll need a second on this one.
Second?
No,
Or do
go
you need
ahead.
a motion to approve minutes?
Are there any objections for approval? None seen. They are approved. We don't have any public comments tonight, is that correct? Or anybody that's supposed to show up? All right. So, and this, we need to have a nomination for the position of the chair. Are there any nominations for the chair? I don't think I can do it.
You can nominate yourself, Penny.
That would be fine, if you want to make that.
I nominate Ms. Badla.
Is there a
I'll
second?
that.
Okay. Does anybody else want to run for the chair? Seeing no one, are there any objections to having me be the chair? Seeing none, I will go ahead and be the chair. May I have a nomination for the position of vice chair?
Yes, you can. You remember.
I don't hear anyone, so I'll nominate Mr. Delker. Would you be interested? Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations we'd like to put forth? If there are no objections to selecting Mr. Delker for vice chair, and I don't hear any, so Mr. Delker, thank you very much.
I think we're a little bit out of order, but I actually need to have, no, you're not out of order as far as you know, but I think I need to have you swear in on, for your reappointment. Well, if everybody was here, and I will do Denise's real quick over the phone too, and I think she can do that. I just have to get a signature from her later, okay? Yep. Maybe repeat after me. I, Penny Badla, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the state of Alaska and the laws and ordinances of the city of Soldotna, and that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Impartially discharge the duties I'm upon which I am about to enter. It sounds like Andrew wrote it. Congratulations. I'm going to have you sign that. Yeah, we do for Ms. Dutile. I'll just, I need a signature, and I'll get this to you, Denise, to have you sign it, or I can leave it up at the desk.
Okay.
Sorry? He's the vice chair? No, this was actually for just being on the board reappointment. Yeah. It's not that we don't love Jim. Denise, maybe we could do it over the phone, and then you can swing by and sign it.
Okay.
Okay. I, Denise Dutile, do solemnly swear
I, Denise Dutile, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the state of Alaska, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Soldotna,
laws of the state of Alaska and the laws and ordinances of the city of Soldotna,
and that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
and that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you. I'll check with Breck whether I can email this, scan it, and email it to you, and have you sign it and come back and ship it back, or whether I should leave it at the counter to have you do that. Sorry, I forgot that at the beginning.
Via email.
Okay. Groovy. Okay. Okay, so I guess we're ready. Yes, well, we need to. Right. Is there a motion to recommend increasing the number of regular meetings to 6 times a year? Up to 6.
Sure, I'll make the motion. We can discuss. Do we need a second?
I'll second it.
Matt?
Yeah, I'll second.
The thought here, I can go ahead and blab.
Yep, yep.
The thought here is to bump it up to 6 once every 2 months, so that we can either one of two things, both involve the board more on some of the stuff that pops up, but also to see if we can get some more involvement and those type of things, as well as openers, because there are some benchmarks we deal with that it would be nice to be able to bring to the board. So in addition to hoping to get more involvement in an easy manner, that will also help us go through and move that. The number of meetings, the code indicates that we should have at least 4, so the board's decision to bump that to 6 would not require a code adjustment or anything else. It was just how the board decided as I read it in the code. If in terms of that, if for some reason I read that wrong or inferred that wrong, then and it would need to go to the council, then we would prepare a change to the existing ordinance that would reflect such. So at this juncture, it's believed this can be done at the board level to decide to meet 6 times a year instead of quarterly. So in terms of those, and as in the memo, we're looking for feedback in terms of those things. If there's nothing going to be on the agenda, then we would cancel it. The planning and zoning is actually scheduled, I believe, for 6 or 12 meetings. Last year I think they had 6 or 7 because there wasn't any agenda items on the other things. So we're not going to drag you in here every 2 months in order to, if there's nothing on the agenda, we'll work from there, because we'll also have a shorter time to the next meeting to pick up anything that could be there if we don't have a quorum. So that's where we're looking at for that, as far as history on that question.
So I'd like to note that Annette Villa arrived here today at 5:47. Now, the idea of increasing the number of regular meetings from 4 to 6 per year. And when Andrew just discussed it, he said that we could decide whether or not to have those 2 other meetings in there, and then we could take them out if we wanted to or not, as needed. So that's for discussion. So, Andrew, did you have anything else to say? If not, I can open it up for discussion.
Other than the code indicates a minimum of quarterly, whereas if the board makes a decision to go to 6, it's not something that requires, I'm thinking as I interpret it, it's not something that requires a council code change. Right. The other 2 items will require a council ordinance approval change.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions or comments?
Yeah, I don't think that it's a huge issue from my perspective that, 2 more meetings a year isn't a huge deal if they're necessary and helpful. I think that it's the quarterly is fine, but like Andrew said, we can always cancel if there's not anything to be discussed. We don't have to schedule that meeting, or we can push it off to the next scheduled meeting. So I would be in favor of this if the rest of the group is.
Thank you. Ms. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jim Delker.
Delker, I didn't hear you.
I said I totally agree with Jim Delker.
Thank you. Ms. Villa?
Yeah, I agree also. If it's necessary, I don't mind. I mean,
So my thoughts on it are, if we go to 6, I'd like it to be listed in there so that we have those dates. And then if we wanted to take it out, we could. And that way we could be planning ahead if there were things that came up that we needed to address, even if it was a short meeting. Because I don't know, but I'm wondering if we'll always be able to have people attend virtually if they can't make it here, because it seems like we don't know. I hope I know what's coming next year, but we don't know that. So would that be an option, Andrew?
I believe so. I think there is, the board can say decide otherwise, but I believe there is a allowance for attendance via phone conference, I believe. If not, I can get a clarification on that.
Andrew, just a question. Do we have the ability to do like a Zoom type meeting?
We can do
situation or video
Zooms, we
too?
just haven't, we've backed off of that a little bit, but we still do have that capability, if we so wanted.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea. I think that it would give us time to really look at some of the things that are impacting, or some of the things that we need to work on, or some of the things that would be really important for us to have in the city as a Parks and Rec advisory. Even though we are just advisory, I think that would give us more connections and more involvement. So I'd like to call for a vote. Mr. Delker?
Yes.
Ms. Villa?
yes.
Ms. Dutile?
Yes,
And I am yes as well, so it passes unanimously. The next thing on is discussion of increasing the number of Parks and Recreation Advisory Board regular members. And Mr. Carmichael, will you give us information on that, please? It's in our packet, but he has...
It hasn't been too frequently we've ever canceled meeting due to lack of quorum. I think maybe over the last almost 30 years, I can count on one hand the number of times that's happened, so it's not been an issue. But the thought is to increase the board size from 5 to 7, and then later there's another item to actually alter the allowance. Years ago, we had the same board size, and we had 2 members from outside when it was the Central Peninsula Sports Center. And then Parks and Rec and stuff, the council at that time decided to drop that back to 5 with an allowance for only 1 outside the city. So this is just trying to get a broader spectrum of people that were able to participate, and considering we haven't made the motion yet or talked about it, because Soldotna's 4,000 people residency accommodates and works for, and there's an indiscernible line between people like Annette and friends of ours that live right outside the city that is Soldotna home. They still participate everywhere in things except for paying property tax, so they pay their sales tax. So it's kind of an expansion to accommodate input from the interested parties, not just the people inside the city. So that's the motive behind that. And if we bump up from 4 to 6 meetings, then if they're due, we have a better chance of reaching a quorum and not having to worry about that, even though it hasn't been a problem before. But with a greater frequency, conflicts do arise when you have 5 or 7 people trying to all find a date that works for everybody. So anybody that's planned a family vacation knows how that works. So that's kind of where the motives comes from, as far as requesting this of the board to move with.
Thank you. Are there any questions or
I
comments?
have questions for Andrew. Just personally, do you feel that that would be a benefit, or would you, I mean, do you think this would be a good move, or do you have an opinion either way, I guess? Is my-
I think it would be a good move, because we saw during the field house first go around how much interest and how much passion the people outside, in the immediate outside of the city had for Parks and Rec inside the city. So those are the people that are using it. You know, we have facilities, police force, streets, libraries built for a population that's much bigger. So trying to get just a bigger cross-section so it would formulate that. If we added an outside person to the 5, then someone, you know, that's 40% outside and 30% or 60% inside. So I think the larger board size works and has some good conversation and provides for even more diversity. I've never had problems working with the board from our department or personally over the years, and it's worked really well at various sizes when it was the sports center. So, but we're growing. We've got a lot of stuff on the plate, a lot of projects coming forth. And when we move forward, if we have 4 or 5, if we have 2 or 3 projects that are going to require some effort and from the board, then at least that spreads the workload again, because everybody has busy schedules. So, you know, instead of 2 or 3 or the board sitting on 4 or 5 projects, we could pick and choose the projects amongst 7 people and go that direction.
So that if we decide that, is that something, so we would make a motion to that effect, and then we would take that to the council, and assume that's a council vote, not a
Yes.
not advisory.
In the packet, it points out that advisory board shall be 5 members, so that would require insertion of language, a change to the code that says, except for Parks and Rec Board, or as the clerk divided, which shall be 7, all boards, advisory boards shall be 5 members. So it would be changed to the code down the line in terms of those things.
Did you have any, Ms. Villa, any comments?
No, I think it's not a bad idea, considering, having a quorum.
Did we get a motion before we started to talk, though? I don't think
No.
we did. Okay. So maybe we can make a motion now? Me too.
Okay, may I have a motion to discuss item B, recommendation increasing the number of, recommendation C, discussing and increasing the number of Parks and Rec Advisory Board members?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for item C, retroactive to the last 5 minutes that we've been discussing.
May I have a second?
The second.
Sure, I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Villa. Okay. Ms. Villa, you said you were in favor of that. Ms. Dutile? Did you have anything else, Ms. Villa? Ms. Dutile?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, and I'd like to follow up with a couple of questions. Right now, we have 5, so a quorum would be 3. If we had 6, a quorum would be 4.
I believe so.
Yeah, so you're really, and we have a seat number 5 that's not filled yet.
Correct.
So that would be still be inside the city seat, is that correct? The
We're
outs,
not talking, we're just talking about the size right now, but.
just the size,
Yeah,
okay.
right now.
And if we did go to 6, and so we'd have 5 seats that were in the city and 1 was outside the city, how far outside the city? Is it the whole borough, or is it just a specific geographical area of people who are really, most of them are the ones who are going to our events and being in our city. So how do we determine the geographical distance? I mean, because that could be important. Are people who come from, I don't know,
Cooper Landing.
Seward,
Yeah.
are they going to want to be reimbursed for gasoline?
Right.
So there's questions that arise
Okay.
that I'm wondering about. And maybe that's not what we should be discussing, but I think it's something we need to think about. How far is that area? I think that's important. And
I think you could recommend language be with the outside residents being within, if you so chose. You know, you could put forth, we support this if the outside member lives within, say, 20 miles of Soldotna type of thing, 20-mile radius. That could be inserted into the could add as addendum, we want to go to 7. And then when we get to the adding the outside resident topic point of the thing, then we can address that radius at that time. Right
Okay.
now, we're looking at the size.
I think that six is an okay number. Having been on a board for a long time, a different board, I think it's really hard to have even numbers, because if you're voting on something and you have 6, you always can have a 3-3 split, so nothing ever happens. And so we don't really have the clout to really make huge decisions, but we have an impact. And so I'm not suggesting we go to 7, because sometimes 7-member boards can be really difficult, or 9-member boards to be on. So that's a concern, is the even number and not an odd number. Maybe that doesn't make any difference. I hear a lot from people that a 5-board membership, when you have people who are really involved, which we all are, that you have a good way of getting things done that you need to get done, and turning down things that you think aren't really something that you'd be interested in doing because it doesn't have a real benefit. So I'm really on the fence on this one. I love more voices, but I'm not sure if this is the way to go. And you know, we just got the information recently, or I did. Maybe I didn't open it soon enough. I read it a few days ago. So that's just a consideration. Are there any comments?
And just for clarification, I think that at least the suggestion from the packet that I read is that we would be going, or theoretically, I mean, we can figure it out either 6 or 7, but it sounds like, Andrew, from what you were in the packet, it was leaning more towards 7 with 2 outside. That was
That's what
one-
went through my head, but as Joel can attest, sometimes that's questionable. But at the same token, Penny's experience on boards is an experienced position, so that's one of those things where it's what the board would, with what the board feels comfortable and is happy with, not necessarily any numbers or anything that I put forth or we put forth.
Any additional, did you have any initial thoughts on that? Okay, I will weigh in there. I personally would not want 2 people from outside the area unless it was really close geographically, because then, I mean, I like to be inclusive, and we include them in everything, but unless the person's inside and is here all the time, and maybe if it's 20 miles, maybe that's doable. And I like smaller boards. You usually get a whole lot more done, but I would be fine with 6, preferably, but I do talk about the 3-3, and I could go to 7 if that's what the board wanted to do.
Actually, I'm looking at these motions and I'm trying to keep
Right
it.
now,
Yep,
I think that's where we should leave it.
And I was mistaken when I separated that and the outside members. So it is in the same conversation. It's not a separate item on the agenda, so we can go from there. So that,
if I might, what I would consider, I would even think about narrowing the scope down less. If I had an opinion, it would be less than 20 miles, because I think, I don't think necessarily, Sterling is about that 10 or 15, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think much beyond that, I know they're still members of the community, but I don't think people that are that far out are as closely attached to the community or as attached to people that live 2 and 3 and 4 miles out, in my opinion. So I would almost be tempted to make the radius be something closer to 10 miles or something along that, just because I would rather have somebody, if we push it out to, too much, 17 miles, I mean, they could be almost on the outside of Kenai and North Kenai and be part of that. And I'm not saying that's bad or wrong, but I just think that as far as for the scope of what we're looking, I think the people that live within a short radius probably spend more time in the town, spend more time, and it's not that I'm trying to exclude the others, but that would just be my opinion.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say?
Yeah, I would like to know, since we have a vacant seat, Andrew, do we know if there's been applications made?
there is actually one open right now. I think maybe we might have someone applying for it, but they haven't been approved by the mayor yet.
Okay.
And so we would have, in terms of those things. So Breck was working with her over some of those topics last week, and we're not sure, but no, we're working forward.
Okay, yeah,
And-
because I did contact somebody that I know that would be a good,
Okay.
addition, and hoping that she's applied.
Okay. In terms of those things. So, I mean, and when it comes down to it, also broadens our recruitment ability too. So, I called, a while back I called someone and I knew they had moved. And then I just basically called and said, "Where's your house? Is it in or out of the city?" And they said, "Out." And I go, "Okay, never mind." So, and because that, and they were in the Mackey Lake area, which is for all,
Yeah.
societal purposes, Soldotna, but still outside the city.
Yeah, it's like Mackey Lake, K Beach, those, I
Yeah.
mean, that's right next to it, or you're within boundary, whereas somebody that's on the far side of Sterling or Cooper Landing or, down outside Casiloff, it's like, are they really connected to the city once you get past Tustamina or get that, that area? It just seems like it's a little bit of far reach, in my opinion. So I would be in favor of a little bit tighter zone, and I think that the 6, as long as we don't feel the 6-6 is an issue with, we really don't have that many, what I would consider contentious votes as far as that goes. It's not very often that we don't agree. We tend to be a group that tends, sometimes there's some differing opinions, but in general, that doesn't seem to come to that. What happens if there is a 3-3 vote on the advisory council, just out of curiosity?
I would think then perhaps if it's a contentious issue, then I'd have to check with the clerk's office on what the protocol is on that.
Does Andrew get to vote as
No, I don't want that one.
Joel votes?
Maybe at that point, we say, okay, we're gonna we can always, someone can always, on the prevailing party, but if nobody prevails, we can maybe at that point bring it back for another thing. Maybe we schedule a work session if it's that big of an issue, where it's that divided, and then see where we're at. Or sometimes you could probably even say, council, this is an issue that has arisen, the advisory board is tied, and what are your thoughts, without either way in the pros and cons. I'm not sure how that's handled. I'll have to ask the clerk. But it's a model we can at least present, and then always get it adjusted back as far as what will and won't work.
What I'm hearing is that we would potentially, we have 3 people who are on the board right now, or the committee, and that are in the city and 1 out. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then if the 5th one would need to be in the city, and we think we have somebody. What we've been talking about is, should we go to 6, and how far out do we go for that area for outside the city when it happens? And we don't have to worry about that right now because we have somebody, and that's wonderful. So, and the reason you're asked, is it an ask from the Parks and Rec, or is it an ask from the city to increase the numbers, or is this just something that?
We got, as you know, we set out the request to everybody to see what we can do to increase involvement, just trying to get a broader stakeholder slice. And go further, and Stephanie and I talked as far as trying to get the board more involved in various ways, and maybe more active in terms of ongoing stuff rather than reports after the fact, weighing in ahead of time sometimes in those, which is, again, the meeting frequency and then the board size changing it, so there's a little more happening at this level. And it could, so.
For the most part, I see the board attending when they can. Most often we have a full board, or we have at least a quorum, 3 out of the 5. And so I'm happy with 5. I think that there's going to be an ask of things. How much would we like to be included, and what might we like to do? Do you think with 6 people you would have more people who would actually become more involved? Is that part of the reason, or is it just to have a new person who can bring new voices, or both?
I think a new person, new vote, another bit, and one more perspective, I think is from where that comes.
For some reason, the 6, and I don't know how long we'll all be on the board, but if the 6 were too many, could you go back to 5? Or go up to 7? We probably could do anything we wanted. I mean, we'd have to rewrite code. That's why I'm asking.
You could request that the code be amended to allow up to 7 members and then put a delimiter in there. If it goes to 6, it would be from inside or outside at your prerogative. And then if you went to 7, then could dictate that that 7th member would be from outside the city, something like that on that
Okay.
order.
You mean, and have the 6th be within and the 7th be without?
It's
And you could
whatever-
always do
It's
this,
whatever you like.
yeah, you
As
could,
of right now, we have the limit on the 1 per
One.
vote.
so you could always do that, you could have that same language in there up to 6, and the 6th one was always, but you wouldn't have to have the 6 either. So if we put in there up to 6, we would always have that option, but if
Right.
it didn't work out, we could have 5.
Yeah, and I can find out for sure. when
Okay,
I
that would be nice to know, because I think that would increase the number of people up to 6. And then if that worked and you wanted to go bigger, then you could do that, but not put too much strain on stuff. You know, not strain, like, I agree with Mr. Delka, with Jim, we vote and we split sometimes, but we never split big, it's usually one person.
Yeah, I don't ever remember too much contention over the years from 1993 on forward.
So if we go to 6, are we keeping that outside vote as 1 still? That's my understanding?
that
Or, I
would
mean, it
be-
depends on what we propose, but
Correct.
is that what we're talking, or that's what kind of is being passed around right now? We're not talking about going to 6 or is anybody proposing that we have 2 outside?
Well, and here it says 1 new resident seat from outside the city.
And you all are, I mean, those are, like I said, those are thoughts from us.
Right.
That's not something that, yeah, it's just your thought, you guys just.
Well, and I'm outside the city, so I'm
Yeah.
okay with it.
Yeah, you're in like,
So,
Hopefully you're within 15 miles, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I am.
but needs to be stated, the way it's stated, it should say 1 new member, because we've already got 1 member who's from outside the city. And I think it would be, I agree with what Jim says, I think it should be 1 member from outside the city and the other 5 members from inside the city. So that, the way it's stated there, how I read it, is we're 5 and we have 1. And if we go up to 6, would be 1 new member seat. You know, if you have, because right now we have 1 from outside, and I like that. I think that's wonderful.
we're 4 and 1 now. If we add another member, then it just determines whether it's, then it goes to 5 and 1 or 4 and 2. That's just the memo,
Yeah.
that's just the memo. That you can change this however you want. That's
Yeah,
just
so this
the
is our
thoughts.
decision, up to us
Yeah.
to propose if we make a proposal, and we could say 4 and 2 with up to 2 outside the city, but they don't have to have 2 from outside too. So we could make the proposal pretty much however we would like to propose it, and then it's up to the council to accept or, decline the proposal. But, so, I mean, that, again, I think as long as, I'm still trying to digest thinking if we have 4 in and 2 out, that's not necessarily bad because we're still, still have a majority of the people within represented, and there still are quite a few people that don't live right within that little box that contribute to the community, and so are still part of that community to a certain degree. Maybe we can force them to pay taxes. If they are on the board, they have to pay property taxes.
So I'll say, we should go on. I'll say I would like it to be up to 6 members with up to 1 outside the city. That would be my preference. So I guess we should go ahead if somebody wants to make a motion. I guess we already have made the
Well, we
motion.
would-
We're discussing.
now-
We need to call
yeah.
the vote.
So in the motion that we made, was the intent of the original motion to go to 6 or to go to 7?
It was to go to 6,
Okay,
I believe.
okay.
Wasn't it, I believe?
Yeah, and that was your intent of the motion, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would like to amend the original motion and say that we'd like to approve going to 6 members with the amendment of requiring that 4 be from inside and up to 2 from the outside.
May I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, motion by Mr. Delker, second by Ms. Villa. Discussion? I guess we've discussed it.
Yeah, I kind of, again, thinking, we kind of shifted gears, but I would just, in my mind, have a problem. The only thing that I guess we can discuss is if we want to add an additional amendment to set a distance range. And that's the only thing, if we would decide, do we want to have some sort of delimiter on how far outside the city? And that's just, that would be the only thing that's kind of left out there still, if we're all still comfortable with having two potentially from outside the city.
Okay, but the motion on the table is 6 members with 2 outside, so
Two
we have to
potentially,
deal.
well, it's up to 2 outside. So it's not requiring 2 to be from outside, it's for up to 2 can be from outside the city limits.
Okay, so that's if anybody needs to do any further discussion, that's what we need to take care of first.
Yeah,
We really,
you could amend, Jim could amend that and say up to 2 people from outside the city within a 15-mile radius if he so chose.
So I'll amend my motion to say that up to 6 members with up to 2 from outside the city limits as long as they reside within a 15-mile radius.
any discussion on that?
Can you tell me where that 15-mile radius is?
I would say it was from the city borders, would it not be?
No.
What is it?
If it's from the center of the city or from the city borders, I guess is the question.
Whichever
I just want to make sure that doesn't preclude Ms. Villa from
Yeah.
serving, so that too as
Yeah.
well. So I want to make sure that whatever parameters.
I'm on St. Teresa.
So.
It's my understanding that I'm on the border of Soldotna and Sterling.
Are you?
In fact, I get my mail in Soldotna.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it would give us.
Could that be a delimiter? But no, because there's probably people in Sterling that get mail. Yeah. It's 7 miles to Annette's?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. Yeah, so it just depends on whether you can, I mean, I guess you could just say 10 miles from any city limit too, or may come up with it. Is 15 too far from any city limit? You know, so if I say within 15 miles of city limits, it just means that you have to be within 15 miles of the closest border of the city limits.
Right.
So does that seem like a reasonable distance, or I don't think that's too far, that encompasses out, I mean, that's what was kind of my intent is, I kind of think of beyond Sterling is, in my mind, too far, but maybe this side of Sterling, or Sterling, if someone's involved and really wants to be involved, I'm not, that doesn't seem to me to be too far. I can try to find out here.
And how far away is Kenai?
8.
8?
Edge of Kenai. Correct.
12 miles from here.
Yeah, I think it's more. Yeah, it's more than 8. I think it's, but I don't know from the far
Right.
side of the city, or what is city limits to Kenai. I would have guessed 10.
And
But I don't
another
know.
thing could be whether or not it's from an unincorporated area within that. Otherwise, I mean, technically, you could have somebody sit on both parks boards for Kenai and Soldotna. with
So
that allowance.
from right here,
Still
Sterling,
a matter of appointment.
Sterling is 12 miles. So it would encompass anybody who is a resident of Sterling proper, would be, capable of doing that. And kind of looking at the map, I don't see any other communities other than Kenai that would fall within that. Kenai is, I think, within 10, probably 8 to 10, I'm guessing, as the crow flies. Depends on whether you go as the crow flies or as the road drives, so.
Would there be a caveat in there for whether or not they were from an incorporated city or unincorporated area or incorporated? That would change.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a
Because
good question.
incorporated, I mean, it's all predicated upon, would be predicated upon the mayor's appointment, obviously, but someone could contend that from downtown Kenai and sit on the Parks and Rec board for Kenai as well as us. So that's.
I
there's
think it
two
would be
instances.
really important to have it be 10 miles, and just keep that even tighter than that, and then, and that would be making an amendment to the
Well,
motion.
Jim could.
So
I could just
accept
amend
that.
You
my
could just-
original motion,
Yes, so,
and that would preclude, potentially, that would likely preclude somebody, like you said, from Kenai from doing, not that we have anything against Kenai, just saying. So, yeah, okay, so I'll amend my original motion to make the number of potential members to 6, with a potential of 2 being from outside the city limits, with the limitation that they live within a 10-mile radius or 10-mile distance from the Soldotna city limits.
Any discussion? Yes?
Do we need a second? Yeah, we probably need a second on it again, or not? Yes, in the amendment, we probably do. So we need a
No,
second.
just the motions you have to have.
I think I think if you amend your own motion, you don't need a second.
All right.
So you're just changing your motion, we still have one motion.
I would like that motion, and the way I'd like to amend it is up to 2. Not, you don't have to have up to 2.
I left that out.
And that really makes a difference because it says up to 2. It's not a requirement. You can say not required, but up to 2 within that radius.
Yeah, and I had intended that, I just didn't say
Okay.
it the second
I
time
thought, yeah, I
around.
caught it, so. Okay. So the motion, okay.
If not, I'd like to do a vote. And so, Ms. Dutile,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Delker,
Yes.
and I will say yes with the amendments. Thank you. Lee?
Yes. Okay. Those are the toughies. So we got those, and I will, perhaps the chairperson could direct the director to work with the city clerk's office for verbiage that would affect the spirit of that motion for a code change, correct?
Okay, so I would like the director to work with the city and come up with the wording on that. And would you please would that be, you bring it back to us?
Probably, well,
Or you wouldn't,
If-
because it would
yeah.
be in May. So
Correct.
you're planning to pull,
we would pull them in and have them ready to go for the
okay.
main
And
meeting.
so if there's further discussion, would the city would they require us to come back or ask us or
I
just
don't
move
think so.
forward?
I
Okay,
don't think
thank
so, as
you.
long as it does what you intended from the minutes and conversation. I think it's pretty clear. Increasing the board to 6 members with up to two from outside the city, with those outside people needing to reside within 10 miles from city limits.
So
Yes, we can do that.
one question I have is, and when I stated it, I meant if we only have one person that's outside, we could give that 5th seat to somebody inside, and
Correct.
that verbiage does not say that.
It says up to.
Up to,
So
so it
that
doesn't
gives us an
preclude
allowance.
it.
We can, you can come home as late as midnight, but if you get home at 11, you're still okay.
Okay.
So if we have up to 2 outside,
Yeah.
then we can have up to 2, but if you only have 1, you're still.
Then
within
you
the
can,
parameters.
then the
Yeah.
other one can be within the city.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so
Yeah,
as
as
long
it's
as that's
written, it
clearly
works.
stated,
Yes.
so people know that if only 4 people can, okay, that's
Yep.
perfect.
Okay. We just finished our year-end summary of 2021, and I think maybe all the department heads used to dread this moment. But at the same token, I think over the years we've done them for Stephanie and/or the previous managers, you look back and you get done with the year and you're kind of out of breath and wondering what the blur was and everything else. But then you sit down and actually go through the exercise and you realize just how much you got done. And that usually happens to us, or how the summer went. Oddly enough, that kind of happened with the campground business. We were up 21% over, it was 21 or 22, Joel? It's in the memo, but 22% over last year's. But it didn't seem that bad. It was busy, but it didn't seem that bad. And we had no idea. When we first ran the numbers, it came across as fairly flat. And we said, okay, well, at least we're flat. And then ran the numbers again. I was like, oh, well, we should have been a lot tireder than we were. But it hit our financial budget with increased stuff like sanitation and supplies and stuff like that with the extra increase because we'd gone very conservatively. But this exercise goes back and shows us all what we've done, what the crews have gotten done mostly, and why they were so scattered at the end of the year, but also that sense of accomplishment that sometimes you don't always have when you deal with the public a lot intimately, but at the same token, arm's reach. You don't always find out what you got done. So you're busy whacking the moles, and by the time the game's over, you have no idea how many you whacked unless you have the scoreboard. So this is kind of a recap of the score in terms of those things of what we've been up to. A lot of this stuff is stuff you're all familiar with, but within the year 2021, obviously the pandemic was still first and foremost that we were all processing and working with, working around and avoiding in terms of those things. So then we upped our game in terms of outdoor recreation, though the pandemic's been horrific and just, I don't have to go on and on there. One of the silver linings has been the explosion of people learning and going outside for alternatives in terms of recognition. When we would do the family skate days out at the lake, the hockey shop would sell at least one brand new pair of skates every day we did the family skate out of the lake, and a couple times a whole family came in and bought skates. And some of those outdoor activities, recreational opportunities that people really came out in droves. You've had trouble renting an RV for the last couple years. Last summer, rental cars were few and far between available, RVs few and far, because even the Alaskans were coming out and about. So if we by any chance end up with a 21, we end up with the same amount of Alaskans coming as we had last summer, plus the tourists being able to get through Canada with confidence again if that happens. It could be very interesting next year. Part of the help also came from the fact that the Reds were still going and limits were still getting easy. Were still easy to catch as late as the 18th of August, so that definitely helped. People came back down numbers of times, but at the same token, we were also up in June from those times too. So in terms of those, but last year in terms of expansion, we started the movie in the lake. We had one slated for February this year. But right now, the lake, all the snow we're getting is sinking the ice, and we've got about 6 inches of water over Ark Lake. Ark Lake has just not cooperated like we had hoped and like it has done in the past. Normally, about the end of February, we run into the overflow, but we've been actually fighting it since the first snow came aboard. But the guys have done what they can, but as of right now, it's not looking good because what we need is to be able to clear it without at least get the snow off of it, and then get the ice paths and rinks exposed to really cold temperatures, and we don't have any of those predicted for the next couple of weeks. So we'll do with it what we can. So as of right now, we're kind of scaled back and focusing our efforts on Soldotna Creek, brainstorming a little bit since Ark Lake is becoming not predictable about possibly adding a skating rink type area inside the loop at Soldotna Creek Park, and possibly going back to the idea of creating a small outdoor rink on the basketball court there too. So, but the point is that the pandemic and people are outside recreating like they've never recreated before. So there are shortages of equipment and stuff, but that's exacerbated by the fact that everybody's now trying to get outdoors. So those between the movie on the lake, that was quite the adventure. So much further attended than we anticipated. Luckily, the state had plowed off the shoulders of the road right before we did that, so cars could actually get through, barely. Had we been able to pull it off this year, we were going to work with to have shuttles available from Skyview just because we had so many people up here or attend. What one was that one? You going to see Annette? What movie was that, Joel? Frozen 2? Frozen 2. So in terms of that, was unbelievably attended to the point where everybody, we got council move forward and have the expansion of parking and stuff at Ark Lake ready to go. So in terms of that, river access stair, walkway and fish walk maintenance, repair maintenance. We have a couple, we brought with one of our new employees that came on, is a certified structural welder, and Sage and Cole went through all 53 of our stairs and rebuilt probably 10 of them. Completely tore down and reconstructed a platform and a set of fish walks, rebuilt a portion of fish walks, and basically straightened and brought all the stairs into fairly straight, at least by the end of the summer. So that was a project we're really proud of. Joel and I hardly saw those two all summer, as did Trevor, because they had a list at the beginning of the summer that they went out and developed and we worked on, and we didn't even see them hardly all summer, but at the end of the summer we had all of our stairs straight and angled and few of them completely rebuilt. So between Cole and Sage, that was a phenomenal thing. That's been one of those, we've been chipping away at it, but this was just a focused effort that 2 people stayed on it all summer and worked out really well.
Are they full-time, or is
Yes.
Cole, the Cole and Sage are
Cole and
full-time?
Sage are full-time, yes.
So they're over with you and Joel, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
I think we should write them a letter.
Yeah.
I could sign it from all.
Okay. Yeah, they did, yeah. We have a fantastic crew. We're happy. Next one we finished up was the second phase of the downtown beautification project. And that was another 30 baskets and another 60 trees. We planted over 100 trees so far along the right-of-ways inside the city. And we're up to 60 baskets, I believe is what it is. And we've not lost a single tree that we've transplanted, which is a pretty good survival record. Had some that were iffy coming awake last spring, but they all came around. We haven't lost any. That is a very small attrition rate for that many transplanted trees, having been shipped up from lower 48 and everything else. So Ken and John Zarneski and Jen Hester, and then Brock Cant was one of the key people working with Ken to get all those areas not only planted and stabbed and hung, but also hydroseeded and then maintained. So had a lady that working this summer that 30 hours a week she watered trees and plants. And we, with the coming on board of the Memorial Park phase, be completed midsummer. That'll be up to a 40-hour per position next summer to keep everything watered, just those baskets. As we know from our houses, if you let those guys go dry, the dirt sinks, and then it's almost game over and a nightmare. So it's something that has to stay on, and there's more to watering plants than just turning the hose valve on or not, in terms of when they're like that. So done a really good job. They did a really good job putting in, worked with the public. So a lot of the public was happy. Had a few that were frustrated, but worked through it. And now I think, hopefully I'm not out to lunch and saying, I think everybody's happy with it now. Even the folks that were a little bit off-put by the idea of trees going in front of their signs and stuff. So that's been a real shot in the arm. I mean, we're getting calls from Eagle River and Homer and Jugiak and wanting to know how we do our baskets and get them so nice
They're
and
really
stuff
nice.
like that. And that's through definite help in working with us is Trinity Greenhouse. They've been very helpful on that for that stuff. So
Andrew, is there a phase 3 in that tree? There is the tree project, or was it just a 2-phase project?
Two-phase.
It was,
Two-phase.
okay. Is there a possibility of it becoming a phase 3 or not?
at this time, I don't know.
That was a grant, wasn't it?
No, that was out of city coffers. There are a few small locations that weren't on the hit list that we are still going to scrape over and hydroseed. There's a couple areas that are small and aren't so pretty, but are within the state right away. So we are going to do a little bit beyond that. It'll just come out of the operating budget and those type of things. So
Just a quick comment. That beautification, you wrote down here that people say it's a beautiful city to visit and even pass through. And we were the city that you drove through for a long time. I mean, everybody would say it. They still do say it. I think that beautification and what you've done with the Parks and Rec and what all of you and Joel and the whole group has done with all the different trails and so many things has made this, it really has made this not just a pass-through. And I think if we could do a little bit more beautification on each end, I think it would really enhance traffic. You know, people walking. I've seen more people walking. Granted, a lot of it's the pandemic, but I see people stopping and taking pictures of those areas. You know, what the area that Bonnie and the group worked on. And I mean, I would stop. I would actually roll the window down and scream out, "Hey, you guys, I love you," you know, and wave. And I think they thought I was the crazy lady, but I don't care. But I think that really makes for community seeing beauty in their community. So I thank you to all of you who did it.
one of the travel magazines in the early to mid 90s wrote about Soldotna. It said we were a strip of gas stations and car dealerships. And perhaps, maybe we still are, but that yields sales tax, and now with a few trees and some plants, we're gorgeous, and people are starting to more and more know Soldotna and think about them from flowers. In terms of those things, one of the board members, Ida, I think, said when she was in Palm Springs, she said she was from Soldotna, and the lady said, "Is that place with the really cool flowers?" And she was happy to say, "Yes." And I'm on the Parks Board, so that type of stuff, and I'm walking. So, Phase 1 of Arc Lake, I touched on a second ago. We've got the clearing and the parking expanded next summer, and a bunch of trees. We've got a parking rail in. We've got a new gate going down onto it. And next spring, we will be adding some more gravel as well as hydro seeding and expanding the sandy area for the beach. We've got permits going through the Corps right now. It shouldn't be a problem, but we will knock that out. And that was a project that was moved forward. We had slated it for the 23 budget year, and Councilman Ruffridge asked to have it moved forward to this year. So, as far as funded immediately for the capital monies to be spent on that, and we're moving full way on that. If you know, I'm sure everybody's driven by and seen how open it is now, and in terms of that stuff. And inside there, all those big rocks that were there, except for one, were actually from the site. So we didn't have to buy any landscaping rocks or anything else. Even the big fatty that was there was actually harvested and repurposed from on site. And if you go to buy those big things, they're not cheap, even though they're just rocks, you know. So that's moving forward at a nice pace. I touched on the record-breaking 21 campground summer. That actually was the highest revenues ever in terms of that. So we changed the Pot 1 policy regarding people just bopping in and checking things out. We were very unpopular for stopping that allowance unless they paid. But our thefts and issues dropped down to half or even less without the pass-through traffic. So that restricted area, unless you pay, worked off for the experience, worked off for the challenges, and then also we monitored the passing through. So, but either way, all numbers except for boat launch were the highest they've ever been. So, those. Riverview Park green space, we've started some work there clearing. We're going to have to start a little bit more. When we headed into the Alaska Recreational Park Association conference and setting it up, one of the vendors said, "We want to bring a piece of ours to showcase and then sell it to you at cheap." And we moved some money around. We're paying for it a little bit with Joel and I trying to scratch some money up, but nonetheless, we will not only be able to add the green space as well as a pretty good, impressive apparatus, kind of one of those rope things like they have in Kenai. And the one we have in storage that they set up for the conference, I think, is 17 by 17 feet tall, climbing with the ropes and such inside. So we will be expanding the play area with the turf and then going a little bit further, even with where we do the grass. So that's an exciting aspect of that, to be moving forward and get that park a little facelift, as well as doing some facelift through the trees and doing those things. So that's an excitement. The city of Soldotna has always, over the last 30 years, when a really good deal pops up, we figure, even though it's bid budget cycle or something like that, City of Soldotna has also said that we can't pass this up. Let's see if we can make it happen. And councils and administrations have always been really good on that, which is thankful, because the way Parks and Rec operates, we're always got some deal cooking.
Real quickly, before you go to the second thing, I wondered, I mean, that park is used, kids were trying to climb over the snow yesterday, I think, not today, because I didn't go out today. I mean, I went out, but not walking. I wonder down that road if, since that park is attracting lots and lots of kids of mostly young age, up to maybe 13, is there a way to get a sign in front of that park so that it's, slow down, kids are playing here? Because it's, sometimes people drive fast in areas. And the other thing I was wondering, I don't know, you're probably aware of this, but on that road there was one person who pushed this snow over, a lot of it, I mean heaps and heaps of it, over across the road, which I believe is not legal, into the park area and beside the park area. And I notice in the springtime, that grass always needs to be done a little bit better than it was before. And now a new person who's moved in further down by the Cobuck end is doing the same thing. And I wonder if it would be possible when you get those free rocks to put some of those there and have it be something that is pleasant. I mean, not a rock that's going to hurt anybody, but a pleasant rock. Kids love to sit on rocks. I still love to sit on a rock, and I'm still a kid, but so I wonder if there's a way that something could be done to maybe let them, well, number one, have them slow down in that area. I think that's there's a couple of parks on the road in other areas too, I believe. But in there, and the sign would be good, but maybe something that would inhibit people from, or prohibit them, whichever way you want to look at it, to actually do that. I mean, I think that's not.
I think it's outside the allowances. We have 3 areas right now that I know of where that's happening. It's on our list. The sign for the kids playing is easy. It's just a matter of having Scotty order and put it in, so we can definitely knock that out. Ultimately, I think long-term, if we can't work with the landowners, then it would be something that would, technically, I think you can get a fine for it. Try not to be that neighbor, but still. But as we expand that green space, how far it goes, and if we open that up, then something about, similar to what you're talking about, could be put in as far as appointments and not look like I'm putting the rock because Bob keeps doing this type of scenario where it actually flows with the aesthetics. I don't know who it is, but I have no idea. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said a name, but I have no clue who it is. So, but that could be factored into maybe our final design is to maybe, since we are expanding the grass area, which then fosters kids running around and maybe balls going in the street, who knows, then at that point maybe something similar to maybe even like what is over at Sunrise, where there's a parking rail even though there's not parking, type of scenario could be put in. We can look at that in the back of our heads, so we can look at seeing we're doing those things. Parks and Rec greenhouse, during last budget year, last spring, we moved some money around and went hungry in a few areas, but we were able to purchase a 20 by 28 greenhouse to add to our plant rearing capabilities and space. We have the little small one that we built out of the old rink attached to the back of the shop in the back, and that's been phenomenal, but we just outgrew it. So we were able to pull that one off and got that constructed right before the end of June, and because it was last year's money. So that's an exciting addition to our abilities. And we purchased with CARES money another set of the pedestrian barricades. As you look at the music in the park and such, you see the yellow ones. We also have a set of gray ones that the city funded, but we also purchased with the CARES money because we did so much delineation during the pandemic in order to get the grass or the festival going when the separation. So those pedestrian barriers were that, and actually even they borrowed some of those when they did one of the clinics and some of the stuff at the middle school, the old middle school, as far as for parking delineation and stuff like that. In addition to that, we also bought an increased amount of pipe and drape that was with the CARES money. And some of that right now is over at the Shots Walk-In Clinic on the corner. So they've incorporated that into that. And we also took a load over to the junior high when they were doing some mass vaccinations over there too. So putting those things into orbit and making use of it and benefiting from those all the way around. And we bought them, and then all of a sudden, boom, we got a request to use them from those actual entities directly to that. So that worked out pretty good. Hindsight's always 20/20, but foresight's always a little bit of a guess. So, but that worked out. Obviously, we had the return of the music in the park. Levitt Foundation is still in love with Soldotna. They got that. We did that last summer, and then they also have the grant again for this summer. So we're looking at starting up that again and continuing. But that was a nice return, even though at one point the beer folks thought they were second-class citizens because they were so far back, and then we moved them forward and adjusted and everything else. And, yeah, and the dancers are mad, so it's kind of like being a parent. As long as half the people are frustrated with you in your household, you must be doing a good job when you got lots of kids. But by the end of the summer, I think we got everything worked out to where most people were happy, but most of them, they were just happy to be there and happy to have their music in the park go every night. My great nephew from Colorado, his special needs, comes up and stays with his papa and nana, and they schedule their whole life so he can go to Wednesday music in the park because that's his gig. And so it's hitting everybody from the dancers, special needs, to beer drinkers, to things. So, yep. So, in terms of those, so we got that. The 4-H Ag Expo, which is the state fair portion related to the animals and such, and some of the displays that was in the Nilchik, moved to the Sports Center for the summer. The city council worked with that group to try it out and subsidized their rent or waived the rent fee for that. It went off a fantastic success. The 4-H people went away just in heaven. And if you ever want a volunteer group that brings on volunteers, every volunteer they say they're going to, that is a group to do it. It's not usually like you got a 500 member group and there's 8 people that do all the work, or 1 if you're doing a Wednesday market. But they came in mass. They were militant. They were just great. We had 0 problems with anything other than we found out that our concrete can be stained by pee from cows and pigs. So guys had to do a little bit extra work to get that up, but in the long run, it was worth it because people came to it that maybe wouldn't have driven to Ninilchik or something like that. So it was pretty cool. One of our employees actually works with 4-H, so he took the week off, but that definitely helped us to have an inside person with that. But worked out really fantastic. Next thing was the 2021 Alaska Recreation and Parks Association. Fantastic success. We actually made money on that for the association in terms of that. Traditionally, the hosting city will write a few $1,000 check to subsidize the event for whatever room or space rental, this, that. But we didn't. Obviously, we had some staff support we provided for that, and Joel coordinated it, and he brought it in well under budget for costs and over budget for revenues from the silent auctions and stuff like that. So everybody walked away happy, and probably the neatest part of the whole thing, aside from the keg curling we did on ice with beer kegs, was the fact that we rented a couple vans to help people shuttle back and forth, and nobody used them because everybody wanted to walk the trail along the river every morning to get to the sports center every time they just came in. Yeah. So everybody every day would come in with a smile on their face because they'd just done a mile walk along the river, and that's not a bad morning walk along there. So, and professionals being professional, one guy, he was pointing and make sure and told me every screw or everything that was loose on the fence and everything else. But nonetheless, they were inspecting our stuff and really having a ball. And I think we had 65 attendees. And a fantastic thing, the food was phenomenal. Joel kind of went outside the box a little bit on the food, and the food was amazing. Not your traditional conference type chicken marsala and beans and potatoes. The food was just phenomenal, and people did comment on that. So I think the one biggest mystery is for the dinner at the awards was the shish kebab meats with parsnips on it. And I didn't know what it was. A lot of people didn't know what it was, but it was good. And then we found out, so now we know we've eaten them. But Joel knocked it out of the park. So on that one, he bore 80% of that load, and then Caitlin and Madeline helped a little bit, and I tried to stay out of the way. In fact, at one point, one of our presenters for the pre-conference workshop got COVID and wasn't there at the time of the whole day session supposed to go. So a few phone calls amongst peers from Donnie and some other folks' connections, and within about 30 minutes, we had a gentleman from the East Coast on Zoom doing the presentation for the day through the network. So, and it was cool because they being from, I think they were, wasn't he Vermont? Massachusetts or Vermont. So he was even familiar with our cold weather growing seasons in terms of those things, other than we didn't have the heat, but it worked out really well. Joel and I usually have a angle one way or the other, but we kind of looked at each other and went, uh-oh. And Donnie from Fairbanks says, I know a guy. Boom. 30 minutes later, we had it. Couldn't get the guy who does the New England Patriots turf to help us, plus that grass might have been a little deflated. But in terms of those, it worked out really well. Also, part of this exercise is working forward on the goals moving forward. Failure to plan is planning to fail, so the projects are plans, goals list for the upcoming year. We're going to work to complete a staff benchmark. My tenure is coming to a close next year. I will, unless something requires, I'm retiring next spring. So it's time to get some benchmarks to move forward with, and we're getting big enough now to where we need some of those numbers, especially in budgeting and especially as we move forward in the biennial budget analyzation. We are, with the expansion of the outdoor recreation plus sports center coming online, there are some staff needs that need to be augmented, and we'll be moving forward and putting the numbers together to have those. And we have good numbers in some areas, but other areas are outdated. The West Redoubt property, within this year's budget, capital budget, the current capital budget, we have $60,000, I believe it is, for conceptual design consulting for the West Redoubt property. That would normally not be any big deal, other than we have some culturally or some sensitive archaeological features there that need to be worked around with stakeholders from the Dena'ina to Kenaitze to all the way out to possibly even the Alutiiq Museum in Kodiak and those entities, as well as river use and those type of things. So we're starting that. Joel and I have actually started having some meetings with some folks, the players and parks, state parks, the college archaeologists, and those type of things. So we'll be having that move forward, and that is something when we get into in the next few months, probably early summer or late spring, we'll be looking for input from the board to participate in that with the consultant when we start doing some of the stakeholder meetings and those type of things. It'll be a little bit of a miniature version of when we did the master plan, but nonetheless has some nuances when we start talking cultural heritage and information and education and those type of designs, as well as neighborhood challenges we may have to face so we don't become a horrible neighbor parking wise and those type of things, as well as how do you highlight but still keep hidden susceptible or vulnerable features. So that's something we're stepping out and working with the Office of State Historical Preservation on, as well as Section 106 of the federal lines regarding historical preservation, those type of things. Luckily, Alan Boras, during his tenure at the college, did a very extensive dig in those areas, so we know where most everything is. So we have educated portions, and then planning on working with the SHPO office as well as the college to try to develop some of those, whether it's signs and plans and traffic. The idea is to first develop the cultural education site so that we both protect it as well as educate, and then also add in a single track walking path, snowshoe single track path, so that the impromptu trails that are there, the social trails that are there that have roots going through them and everything else, can be improved to a safer walk. If we invite people to do the loop for the educational purposes, we should need to have a decent trail. This isn't slotted to look like an 8-foot wide trail, maybe at Centennial, but a smaller one, but still with some and what we can work with the people in terms of those things. There is a fishing access or an area that people fish very heavily in that area. Frankly, that's way down on the list in terms of dealing with that or even presenting it. It's like the third part. That's happening. We know it's happening. It's not demolishing things, but we will need to, at some days possibly, do a project there that we can do. The city has on its capital list right now tentative an amount of money to do this project in terms of that, except for the fishing stuff, but there are sources of money moving forward for riparian and fishing access improvements, protect the environment. So that's going to be one for which we'll be coming and saying, okay, we need some input from the board.
I have a question, a quick
Yep.
question on that, because I use that trail, I don't access it from that area, but when I walk down that section, I walked down with a friend this summer, and it's a beautiful section, but I don't see parking access. So when people go there to fish, do they park in front of people's houses? I know there's not much area there. And
That's
so-
everywhere, but no.
So the access
They do make themselves a problem, and that's one of the challenges we have to negotiate through and navigate through the conceptual design. How much parking we put, where we put it, and those type of things. Even in a meeting we were in the other day, we were looking at trying to figure out how, and we looked at it, and then somebody said, well, why don't you if you put parking here, put it over here. And that could solve this and this and this, and hopefully that's the other challenge that we'll be trying to develop it in a manner that doesn't create a nightmare for the adjacent residents. Whether or not, yeah,
As far as residential use, and people walk down that road all the time and and they're polite, through the
Yeah.
cemetery, and I see that as really a historical area.
Yeah.
I mean, that section, and so that's interesting, and it's nice that it's narrow, but it would be nice to have some additional, like a bike path might be really nice through there. I mean, there's some areas, I've tried it, some areas are really difficult, and other areas are really nice.
and then, yeah, so that's where we're looking at some of those things on the conceptual. It doesn't tell exactly what the trail is, but it says, well, how does this look in general, when you first drive, kind of like the drive-by view, but it does address some of those things and works it out with not only local residents, but the city, and then some of the various stakeholders that have happened in speaking with the regulatory folks in SHPO. They're pleased that before this even hits the street, we're hoping to have all the stakeholders at least familiar to an informed level so that it catches nobody by surprise, whether it's the neighbors or the various native organizations or regulatory agents and everything else, so that those people that have an intimate interest don't see something and without our doing our due diligence to try to make sure there's as few I didn't know this was happening as possible. Can't get away from all of it, but trying to work through those and do it the right way, A through B. And the next one is Riverview Park, where we're going to finish the green space addition and install the new playground rope equipment. Parker Park, for years, when the park was originally designed, there was a gravel patch left that was intended to hold a gazebo. At the original construction, the vision was to make that the event park. And then we had a couple events. I think we had 2 Progress Day events there, and then they went to the Soldotna Creek Park, and nobody's ever been back for large events. So we're looking at turfing. Go ahead and planting some more grass over there and and prettying it up a little bit in terms of those things. And when you look down the road, it would be nice, and there'll be Joel's in here, but maybe that might be a really cool park to have weddings in. If you had a small pavilion there, not huge, or maybe even just an arbor, and then that's if somebody wants to have a wedding at a quiet park, and then could actually reception at the senior center. Who knows? We look towards a pavilion also eventually at Soldotna Creek Park that could serve the same thing with a backdrop of the Kenai Mountains looking up the river. We've talked about rose gardens or stuff like that. So, but in terms of that, right now, as far as pavilions go, they want to have a wedding. They got Soldotna Creek Park, which is a little bit big, but a small, intimate, quiet with decent amount of parking. That might be pretty cool. So Parker Park is going to get a little bit of a facework there. Dog Park, beetle kill tree mitigation, and started replanting using trees transplanted from Centennial, where density is too great for tree proliferation. We're hoping to be able to get that grant freed up. In the meantime, last fall, we took down about 30 trees, or no, we took down 60 trees last fall, and just a few weeks ago, we took down another 30. That park, in all honesty, like we've talked before, will be fairly bare by the time we get all the dead trees out. And then the dog crew, Connie Hawker and her bunch are already starting to work towards raising some money and asking how they can help us work towards the reforestation of it and planting the trees and those type of things. Because dog park being dog park, it's not one where you can put tiny trees. You have to have a little bit of higher dollar, a little bigger tree to be able to withstand and then fence it. And you're not going to keep all the little dogs from helping them out watering wise, but but nonetheless, we've got a plan for that to reforest it and do that with that. One thing we have done with trees when we did the Memorial Park landscaping, we did cleave out any new spruce right now because the beetles are hitting old and young trees, which is atypical from the last time the beetles hit. So we went ahead and said, don't give us any more spruce, where they were going to put spruce in, or originally suggested spruce. We went with larch instead. So we're trying, kind of got it within our own administration. We're not planting any more spruce except for the ones that John ordered for along the highway, and those are kind of removed, and hopefully they'll survive in terms of those. Because what has happened is they hit so heavy in the big trees that it's stressing the whole biomass of tree forest areas, and then instead of just hitting the old or stressed trees, the younger trees are stressed, and so they're hitting 4-inch black spruce and everything. It still kills the trees. The beetles don't actually mature in the small trees to a point where they then fly, but nonetheless the tree's still dead. So when they came through last time, we were hitting 40, 60, 70-year-old trees. Now they're hitting 10 and 15-year-old trees. So they've headed into the second generation that could have replaced the big ones. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us in those type of things. And it's just Mother Nature teaching us that you may be man, but you're still insignificant in the big picture, and your efforts are fairly futile when I have my mind, when has mine set. So I was teasing Trevor the other day that he must have broken Mother Nature's daughter's heart because the weather and the beetles are killing us. So in terms of that, so Karen Street Park, skate park, paint the skate ramps, and begin skate park. There's a third year out, I think, is some money in the capital budget to do some augmentations at the skate park. We've had a different, when this project originally came onto the desk, it had a basketball court and a kicking wall for soccer, a BMX area, and those type of things. And we're since we have the court at Soldotna Creek Park, we'll probably be bringing back a redesign for that money a little bit, where maybe we add a designated pump track like they have in Seward for the bicycle community, where there's kind of one over there, but the way it is needs some actually firm development as far as ongoing. And then the concept has been thrown up of whether or not to expand the skate park a little bit and maybe cover it to stretch out the season for the kids to be able to still use that, and instead of having to deal with the snow as long, or use it more, maybe even during the winter, I don't know, but at least so that they're not shut down all winter. So some of those concepts, but that will come back to the board. We don't envision at this time bringing a contractor in for that, but something we will be maybe doing some work sessions on to get the board's input and figure out what we should do with that to make it a little bit better park, a little more welcoming for not just skateboarders or scooter folks at the park, but also bicyclists, and whether or not there's some grassy areas filled in so that the family can go while some of them ride the bikes and skateboard and some of that stuff to bring it up. Right now at the skate park's there, and then the rest of it's kind of snow storage in terms of that stuff, but to bring that up to scale to the rest of the parks we have. Centennial campgrounds, goals and stuff, beetle kill, tree mitigation. This spring we have to dredge the Centennial boat launch. We started working on those permits for those. It's something that's ongoing. We have to do every 5 or 8 years, 7 years in terms of those. So that's on that, and that's a pretty big chunk. And the permitting takes almost, I think, longer than the actual work, but nonetheless, start dealing with the water in the riverbed, whether it's in a lagoon or otherwise else, and you have to be careful and work within the regulatory agencies to make sure you're not one of those people that do damage instead of with good intent, but result in damage. Campsite reservation software, we're looking to do an RFP for that in the next month. For that, I'm going to be reaching out to the board to have get some assistance evaluating the proposals when we do some of the not just money-driven proposals or requests for services type of things. We do a call for proposals that's not necessarily price-based, but the proposals are scored rather than just going by price. So we'll be looking out to the board for help for that one. Swiftwater Campground moving still, beetle kill mitigation, you see that all over the place. So Soldotna Creek Park, we're going to begin reconstruction of the beds at Soldotna Creek Park. One of the things we found last year was historically you take your plots and take them to the dump. We took them the first year, I think we'd take them to the dump. Second year we kept the pots and emptied the soil and then returned the pots to Trinity. But what we found was with the new piece of equipment, the Ventrac that we purchased last year, is that we can repurpose all that potting soil. And buying potting soil is not cheap to do it. So we have probably 2 or 3 yards of potting soil. We figure there's 1 cubic foot of potting soil in each pot, maybe actually 1 to 1.5. So by the time you take that out and grind it up with a piece of equipment, you've got almost 2 full yards, over 60 to 90 square feet of potting soil that can be used. And then all of a sudden, instead of marginal or augmented soil all ongoing, we go in there and we've got potting soil in our plant beds, which are a lot more conducive to healthy plants with water holding vermiculite and all that type of stuff. So that's actually exciting to repurpose that type of stuff. So we're going to be working around the perimeter of the basketball court. As you might probably notice, some of the areas were all worn off with grass, and the one area on the corner was definitely predictable. But the thought was we have mechanisms and some materials that we planned on doing, but we wanted to see exactly where people were walking before we put that stuff into place because it is very expensive. That being said, it's called invisible structures. It's something that goes under in the soil, and the grass grows through a little bit so that the soil doesn't get but it prevents the soil from being compacted and then killing the grass. So Kenai Watershed Forum actually used it underneath their parking lot when they did the mass remodel and redevelopment of the Soberg House. They have an amount left over from that project that they've said they would give us so that we don't have to buy the material in terms of those things. So that's a State Farm deal there because that's like a good neighbor. They're there and called and they said sure. So it's kind of in their backyard. So as we talked last time around, reconfiguring some of that gravel for what the actual use is by widening that gravel at the main parking lot so that not only the food trucks can park on the gravel like they need to now, but then the waiting for the food and the walking back and forth trying to figure out whether you want the wontons or the tacos or the whatever you want. That's what things. So we'll be changing that a little bit. And then my dream, even if I got to do it in my own garage, is to construct a Santa sleigh that are like the animals that are over there with fish pulling it that we can put in the middle of the rink in terms of those. So to add to the highlighted features. I know that's small, but that's one of the things, my dreams. SRC, we're moving out of the SRC offices before May 15th, which is when the contractor for the remodel will come in and start tearing out that ugly old ceiling, repainting the inside of the arena in its entirety, remodeling and reconfiguring the office spaces, replacing the 55 exterior doors, and those, as well as the front parking area, reconfiguring the concrete and redoing that concrete that's shown its age after being bladed and chipped everything for the last 40 years almost. So that's going to have a reconfiguration in terms of those things. So that's scheduled right now. The bulk of it will be from May 15th till the end of September with 2 open breaks in there, one for the Kenai Classic event to be in the Sports Center and then one for the Ag Expo of 4-H to come back again. So that's an exciting exciting thing to finally get rid of that ugly ceiling over the bleachers. And in terms of those things, so with SRC, we still got beetle kill mitigation there. That's pretty much a standard, ongoing everything. Working too with CARES funds. Actually, it's CARES funds. Actually, it's a different acronym moving forward, but similar to the CARES funds from the pandemics. We were funded and received grants to purchase and develop a recreation trailer that we're envision is to be able to take this to Arc Lake or Soldotna Creek Park with 100 pairs of skates in it, skate sharpener, generator, and then also we purchased a 21-foot inflatable self-standing movie screen. So, and generator and stuff like that. For in the wintertime, it would be a skating thing where we could actually sharpen the skates inside there and rent the skates out of there and move all of our equipment one trip. And then with time, eventually, and we've done this on a small scale, is have this rec trailer move forward and be able to go to Soldotna Creek Park or Farnsworth on Wednesdays or something like that. We had Michaela Smith, an intern we had a year before last, did a small version of this, and it was fantastically received in Soldotna Creek Park. And the amazing thing is there were quite a few of the numbers of people who attended had just moved to the community, knew almost nobody. So this little 20, 30 person groups you would have on Thursday afternoons got to know other people, and it really brought people into the community and then gave an option. So some things are games that brought out. The dream, hopefully long term, is to have a portable pump track that could be relocated and doing those type of things, just to have almost a big trailer of recreation on wheels, which is what it will be. The scheduling software implementation, we're pulling the pin on that. We did try one a while back. We're not money out, but it did not work. It had some flaws in it deep down in that we found after 6-8 months of using it that were not palatable for our department, let alone finance. It had some quirks in there that I don't know how could have ever gotten past. They must not have had any accountants or finance people in it. So we'll be doing that. It's the same program that 3 other cities in Alaska uses. Our challenge of finding that has been one that would work for a rink. The rink stuff didn't work for rec stuff, and the rec stuff didn't work for rink stuff. So we think we have an entity that'll work and move forward in terms of those things. Another goal is this transition succession plan for whomever takes over after I retire, so that they at least can communicate some of the 30 years of connections and stuff like that I've developed over the years, and some of the stuff that, because I'm such a scatterbrain, haven't told anybody but know how it works, So there's the old saying about the gentleman they hired for $50,000 to make the cruise ship run, and he walked in with a bag and a hammer and he smacked the engine and made it run. And they were frustrated with the bill, and he said, well, right now you're losing $30,000 a day. The bag's rental is $5. The hammer rental is $5, but the knowledge of knowing where to hit that engine to make it run is $49,905. So kind of deal. So in terms of that, so some of that knowledge will stay after we go. Another thing we're doing is Ken and I came up with this brainstorm. We're just talking this flower to food trial program. We have probably 10 to 15 barrels around town that we plant, and we have to water them. We have to deadhead the flowers. And Ken and I were talking. I said, what if we put potatoes in there? And we had the green that we normally have to buy greenery. When you buy the greenery, that'll give us our greenery with 3 or 4 potatoes in there. And then we bring, instead of 20 plants in each barrel, it'll have maybe 3 or 4 tall, spiky ones, flowering, coming out. And at the end of the summer, we take the potatoes to the food bank. And so actually that's kind of I think hopefully it'll work. It actually reduces our maintenance requirements. And it won't overload because we still have to water them, but we just won't have to deadhead them, and it'll reduce some of the basic costs of instead of putting 20 flowers, 15 or 20 in each barrel, we'll be putting 4 in there and 4 and a couple potatoes. So we'll see where that's going. Some of the trends across forestry and urban development is to start planting tree-bearing fruit and those type of things as your ornamentals, so that then you can harvest that and stuff like that. There are some grants out there we've looked at, but to date, as far as the trees, we've kind of said, we're going to hold off on that because we don't want to invite more moose than we already have. So in terms of that stuff, you have a bunch of delectables along the spur in Soldotna Creek Park, and mama and baby moose are going to come in and have a snack, and then we end up with conflicts. So, but that's kind of stepping into that where the work we already do can benefit at the end and still have things look pretty in terms of those. So that's all our insanity for the year, I guess you could say. Looking forward, as you know, I sent out to everybody to figure out what ways we might be able to make it more worth your while to be on the board or engage you further, and I've got responses back and working with those. One thing that did come up was the possibility of maybe just throwing a note out to the board every month on as far as what we did the prior months, and we're going to look at that so that if something pops up or, all my friends, no matter what, if something's going on in the town, they ask me, and well, what's going on in the corner by Centennial? Well, it's food processor or fish processor. What are they clearing here? Don't know that one. So in terms of those things, that way you all don't get, you all are in the know as well. Obviously with our direct park properties, you folks have been informed and abreast, but even the downtown beautification program, that way you can talk on some of those points, or if we've had a problem or a challenge where we had to make a decision between meetings, then we can inform you as those type of things as well. So we'll be instituting that, and then moving forward, we'll have a council approves, then we'll have a hunt for 1 or 2 more board members, and life will be happy dappy do, and we'll see you in May, as far as me.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. Mr. Carmichael? Denise?
No question.
Okay, thank you very much. We all got the letter from Andrew. Stephanie Queen, I believe, asked you to come up with that, and maybe the 2 of you did that. I'm not sure, I didn't ask. And I didn't send it to the other board members, but I responded, not right away, because I was out of town, and when I came back, I didn't even look at my emails. I just hit the ground running on other things. So I wanted to just, I'm going to read this really quickly. My position to Stephanie Queen's request is possibly to bring the advisory board into a more active role, to be able to lean on them for more involvement in planning, etc., is a resounding yes. In my recent experience as a committee member, a small committee was involved in reviewing materials that were being put out to bid, and I appreciated and welcomed this involvement. I also know that the other committee member who reviewed the materials was happy to do so as well. It would be fun to look over some of the past practices and see what the Parks and Rec Advisory did and how they were or were not included. Soldotna Parks and Rec Department could potentially benefit from increased advisory committee member involvement and responsibility by asking us to be involved in the following, and this is just a list I came up with quickly. Research promising Parks and Rec practices, create and connect with the community to enhance involvement and ensure voices are heard. Review current, future, and dream projects to lend another eye or perspective. Look at existing programs we are running to see if there are ways to obtain additional financial help or ways to update any programs. Encourage more students to become involved in summer work programs and/or existing programs throughout the school year in order to build, enhance skills. Look at potential initiatives and projects that Soldotna Parks and Rec is interested in pursuing and give feedback. We could run fundraisers. I'm good at that. I don't like doing it. Support the Soldotna Parks and Rec however we can and as time allows and skills are needed. I believe the Soldotna Parks and Rec Advisory Board would be interested in a more active role. However, I can only speak for myself. Being involved in upcoming projects will be beneficial for board members as well as for Parks and Rec and for PR. I believe a certain level of inclusion would be nice. From my position, it should be our role to support, not mini-manage. That being said, it would be nice to have regular updates and timely information when available and important. And that way we would be in short of knowing what was going on without mini managing. It would just be, sharing with us. If the city and the Parks and Rec Department think there are things they could or should bring forward to us to ensure that we are in the know how, then I would like those topics, things, ideas to be brought forward if possible. And I think they do it well already. The time commitment is fine, and I'm willing to put in more time if needed. Community is important to me, and I'm sure it is for everybody on this board. And the future of our city is as well. We should or could work on the following: the Soldotna Sports Complex upgrade and renovation. That really is something that it only lost by 18 votes. We could look at procuring more grants for renovation or rejuvenation and creating more healthy places for kids and families. That way we would hopefully build a more resilient community. It's been a hard year, 2 years. Thank you for reaching out to us. I hope this is helpful going forward. If we had time to brainstorm as a board sometime, that might be nice when we're all here. I guess we are all here tonight. I know that we would have some wonderful ideas from our current committee board members. I'm thankful to be in the board. And I also just wrote down now, an activity calendar would be really nice. I know we have one, but an activity calendar that was weekly or monthly for families or kids that people could access and get information. And I'm looking forward to like community schools and all that stuff that you guys do. So that is my report. And the only other, it's not really a report. I did speak with the mayor to Montessori School, and our mayor of this city is amazing. The presentation he gave to the Montessori School for their Blue Ribbon Week was wonderful. So it was really fun to go and be a presenter with him. He's quite an amazing man. Thank you. The city manager is not here, and he doesn't generally just send a report, does he?
No,
I didn't think
she asked
so.
if I needed her, and she's taking tomorrow off, so I said, why don't you start your weekend tonight? I'll give you the Cliff Notes next week.
Leads us to council comments, and that's the council, and nobody did, Mr. Ruffridge, he didn't send anything in, did he? Okay, thank you. So that leads us to board members. Who would like to go first? Will you?
I have no comments tonight.
I nearly cried when Andrew said that word, retirement.
The R word?
Yes.
That's okay.
But no, I'm thankful to be here, and if there's anything that you think that needs to be done more, that's kind of what I got out of that letter, out of this meeting, is that maybe there's more that we could be doing that we're not, and I'm missing how I can be more involved, I guess. I'm willing to do more if needed. I don't have a problem with that, because I love Soldotna.
The board has always done anything we've asked of it. So it's not a matter of the board not stepping up. It's a matter of
Okay.
us not asking enough of you in terms of that stuff. So we'll work better on that one. But the board's been awesome.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Miss Dutile?
Sure. Thank you for including me telephonically. And I also want to say thank you to you guys for keeping the trails open at Centennial. Wonderful to go for a walk when it's not knee-high deep. And at Parker Park, too, I noticed the other day that they're clearing that out, too, so that's kind of cool. And then just in closing, all of you guys be careful going home, because it is still snowing.
Nick. Oops. Said that out loud. Still snowing.
I guess I do have one comment as far as Andrew's announcement. I was just in denial and I was ignoring it.
Sugar. Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Mr. Delker. Andrew, I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done over the past, you said almost 30 years? Yeah, so thank you, that's impressive. And I wasn't ready for that tonight. So, and I would like to say to the Parks and Rec, I love that you have your own greenhouse. I just think that is so awesome. I want you to build me one too. No. I would like to thank Stephanie and Queen and Andrew Carmichael for sending us that letter. Sorry it took me so long to get to it. I would also like to commend you guys for an extremely productive 2021 year. It's amazing what was accomplished in that time. And for the two people who did all the Sage and Cole, all that work on the river, I'm amazed. And thank you for all the other people who made everything that happened this summer possible. You know who you are. And I just wanted to say to Mr. Carmichael, you can always count on East Coasters and Mr. Todd for stepping up when, at least not me, but those other East Coasters for helping you with your turf and surf.
Turf and derf.
Turf and surf. And we have a guest here tonight. Mr. Todd, would you like to say anything? You're good. Okay, so if there's nothing else for the good of the order, may we adjourn at 7:24 p.m. Thank you very much. And before I do that, our next meeting is May 5th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. and hopefully there'll be no snow happening. Good night. Have a good night.
Good night.